Okay, so after Women in Black, we're looking here at another organization of Israeli women that is born not out of the first Intifada, as in the case of Women in Black, but which is born out of the second Intifada. And this organization, as you can read from the title, is called Machsom Watch, Checkpoint Watch. This presentation on Machsom Watch is made of two parts. A first one that will very briefly describe the situation on the ground against which these women have mobilized and who these women are. And second, the second presentation, which is called Machsom Watch 2, will give some testimonies, some examples of their activities. So follow me to our first slide. So Machsom Watch was established in 2001 as a volunteer organization of Israeli women coming really from all sector of society. We have here a very strong connection between being women, being part of a feminist and women's organization, and the construction of peace and working with or helping Palestinians overcome some of the difficulties of the occupation. The idea is that because the checkpoint system had become so oppressive that would hinder the movement of and the freedom of movement of Palestinians in their land, given that most of these checkpoints were inside beyond the Green Line, looking from an Israeli perspective, meaning inside the Palestinian territories, the women of Machsom Watch would help limit the damage, let's say, brought by the Israeli checkpoints. Now, the aim, the means, to support, to express support for Palestinians and their rights was to be staying at checkpoints, observing and reporting on what was going on at the checkpoints, seen as the keys or as the places where the mechanisms of the occupation more evidently emerge. And this happens more than once, clearly on a day, but certainly on a daily basis. The aims of this organization were to influence public opinion in Israel and throughout the world through, in fact, the observations and the reports and the photographs and the tours that they organized. We will see later on some testimonies, but also to stand as witnesses to authenticate the conditions that Palestinians had to undergo every day to move around, and therefore what it really meant being under an occupation, one aspect of what it meant to be under occupation, and in the third point to again ease the frustration and hardships of Palestinians, helping them in any way they could. These informations that I've just outlined for you come from the website of Machsom Watch, which I strongly encourage you to browse, because to go through these reports is really an eye-opener on the mechanisms of the occupation, reported in a very dry and authoritative manner, as we shall see later. First of all, it's important to know that one of the founders of Machsom Watch, Yehudit Keshet, wrote a book entitled Checkpoint Watch, Testimonies from Occupied Palestine, but also that a very long testimony by Yehudit Keshet can be found on the website of Gila Zvirsky that I pointed out in the section on Women in Black. The three founders, among whom Yehudit Keshet, in fact, came from activism in the women's movement. And their aim was to challenge the military presence at the checkpoints with a civilian presence. Moreover, there is clearly a gender challenge here too, or a gender encounter, if you like, between male soldiers and women, there is also a very important gap in age, as most of these women are in fact ladies from a much older age than the soldiers standing at the checkpoints. In fact, there is a fascinating article entitled the gazes at the checkpoint that I've listed for you in your bibliography, that you can find on internet, which is really revealing of the manifold dynamics that the relations at checkpoints create and provoke, both power-wise and gender-wise, which may seem the same thing, but what I meant is military-civilian relations and male-female and young age, old age. It's important to note that there is a Tel Aviv branch and a Jerusalem branch of this movement. And in the Tel Aviv branch, the majority of members are Israeli-born, while the Jerusalem branch, half of it appears to be half of it Israeli-born, while others come from Western Europe, the USA, South America, and Central America, and North America, I imagine, as well. Now, these are women, as I've said already. They belong to the liberal left Ashkenazi elite, meaning European or Western anyway. They're middle-aged, they belong to the middle class, they very often have a university education, and all these elements together mean that they enjoy a number of advantages. First of all, the education, and thus the self-confidence, the age, and again, as a factor of self-confidence, their education, very often belonging to Zionist families, means that they have access to power center, and of course they have the resources to be able to spend some time doing volunteer work, and they have free time and transportation means. So these ladies, as we will see in the next presentation, stand, and as we can already see in these pictures, stand at checkpoints to help and to network and to ease the restrictions of the occupation as they materialize through the checkpoints. But before we go and see and read some testimonies of their work, let's have a look at the structure of the checkpoints. And here we are. According to the OCHA, the Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs of the UN, which regularly drafts a report every year, drafts a report on the progress of the separation barrier and on the structure of this construction. The complicated structure of this construction, checkpoints must be composed of two elements: an infrastructure which stops the traffic of cars and of pedestrians, and the permanent presence of Israel security personnel. And this could be the Israel Defense Forces, the army, the border police, the civil police, or since 2006 or 7, security at checkpoints has been outsourced to private security companies. So in order to be considered a checkpoint, these have to be the elements: a structure that impedes transit and security staff. But there are also other structures which are part of the mechanism of the occupations, which are important to get familiarized with. These are the partial checkpoints. As you can see, they are similar to checkpoints, but they are not permanently staffed. This is a rod barrier, which is composed of a fence or a concrete barrier running along the side of the road. These are all definitions taken from the UN Office of Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs. There are road gates with metal gates to block access to a route, roadblocks and earth mounds. These are the roadblocks, and these are the earth mounds, which actually have the same function. They prevent vehicle access to a given place or a given land or road. And then you have trenches and ditches, which are dug across the flat land or along the side of the road. As I mentioned earlier, some checkpoints are now privatized and have been outsourced to civilian security companies, which is a very problematic turn in events, in the sense that then the private security companies are not accountable to the public in the same way as an army is. So let me move on now to the next slide. Which, as you can see, shows in a very complete way the situation of land property and checkpoints and other important elements in the area between Israel and the occupied territories. Now, first of all, let me mention where this is from. As you can read here, this is from the Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs of 2012. You can see here that every green cross is a checkpoint on the green line, and every red cross it's a checkpoint. Blue crosses are partial checkpoints, and little triangles are earth mounds. Little quadriangles are roadblocks, and so on. The various colors on the land indicate property and subdivisions, which are not of our concern now. But if you follow the red crosses, for example, those of the checkpoints, you see that they're all very close to settlements, meaning that they guard the entrance and exit for certain settlements, but at the same time impede the movement of those Palestinians who need to go from one part to the other by crossing this area. This is even further complicated now by the fact that certain settlement roads, actually all settlement roads, are roads that where Palestinians cannot travel. So this further complicates things. And this is another little map that shows you. And sorry, this is the that shows you again where checkpoints are. This is the same area, a little bit bigger, and this shows you not only the checkpoints, but which Palestinian communities are affected because of that checkpoint. So if the checkpoint is the black cross here, you see the blue dots. That is affected by that checkpoint, and the red dots that represent the Palestinian community isolated by either the current or the planned barrier. And if you look, for example, around Jerusalem, you can see that various checkpoints here hinder and affect population, the life of the population. And as you can see from this map, the green line is actually further west than the line where checkpoints are. So that means that these checkpoints are all in Palestinian territory. And I will just conclude this presentation by showing you a list that again has been taken from the OCHA report that I've already mentioned a few times, where you can see a list of checkpoints, partial checkpoints, and checkpoint gates on the barrier, on the separation barrier. This list was adjourned to 2012. In case you want to know more about checkpoints, apart from going on with Machsom Watch in the next presentation, I encourage you strongly to visit the website of B'Tselem, which is another Israeli NGO which monitors on the ground the development of the situation of checkpoints. So please follow me to the next presentation where we're going to meet some of the Machsom Watch ladies. Thank you.